Greetings, Benjamin J. from Ben's Trains with another in the series. Well, another locomotive made out of junk. Now, I just put this motor together. In fact, this is the motor I used last night in that video about the drill press vise for pressing wheels on. Probably should have gone ahead and done a video of pressing the wheels on this, but in any case, put this together out of parts. It's far from perfect, but you can see how rusty this was. And don't remember where I got it from. It's been in the parts box for quite a while. So put a new contactor on it, ran the wire up, bypassed the E-unit. Now this E-unit, you can tell by the rust, this E-unit was dead as a proverbial hammer. This thing wouldn't even buzz. It was absolutely dead. The coil's dead. So anyway, rather than working on these things, pulling them apart, in my opinion, it's just easier to bypass them. I am not a fan of the E-unit by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't like the fact that Marx locomotives always start in reverse. I just do not like that. So, I can't say I always bypass the E-unit, but lots and lots of times I do. If they glitch, if they don't work, it's just easier to bypass it than to tear this entire thing apart, tear the E-unit apart, work on it, put it back together, and see if it works. It's just easier to bypass it. Anyway, so put this thing together out of parts, and it runs actually quite well. I ran it on the bench last night. So I looked around for a shell to put it in. Now, I had a 490 shell here, and you can see this is a late 490 shell because it's designed for the micro forward-only motor. Now, the problem with this one was the front stack, or the front bezel was broken, and really badly broken. So in order to repair this, because once these things are broken off, that plastic tube, once it's broken, there's no practical way to fix them. So what I did was I just simply cut it off with a hacksaw, filed it smooth, and then mounted a bezel with a lens. Now this is actually off a Canadian Pacific. And just opened the hole and epoxied that lens and bezel in position. So anyway, I'm going to put this together. It'll give me a running locomotive. I also had to add a tab and slot drawbar. And for now, I've just got it mounted with a paper joiner. I'll eventually put a screw in that. So we're going to put this together. It'll give me another locomotive. Like I said, it's good to be back working on trains again. So I've got a couple of screws here. Here's a good tip. If you want to keep from losing your screws, what I do is when I have them, stick them to a magnet. That way they're there when you reach for them. There's nothing more frustrating than working on a locomotive, going to grab the screw and find out that it's fallen on the floor or it's soaked into the bench or something. Anyway, it's a great way to keep your screws where you want them to be so you can get to them. So I've got my screwdriver. We'll put this together and see how this is going to run. So it just snaps together, of course. Grab one of the screws, put it in this side. It's always nice to take a bunch of junk and put it together and make something out of it. In this case, this is all just scavenged parts, all of it. And I buy a lot of this stuff on eBay simply because it's broken. And a lot of times it's just boxes of parts, or I'll buy a locomotive that will come with some other stuff. In this case, this came with something I bought on eBay. I'm not really sure what. Anyway, it was originally for the micro motor, forward-only motor. And like I said, the front bezel for the headlight was broken. Actually broken almost in half. So I chopped it off, filed it smooth, and then epoxied a bezel and lens from a Canadian Pacific in place. Far from perfect, but it works. Anyway, I've got this motor stuck in there. Let me grab the camera off the tripod. Now, I have not run this on the track yet. I just got this put together. So we'll put it on the Marx Consist. This is, I think it's still 14 cars. All right, let me get this tripod out of the way. Give me a second here. All right. So it's on the rail, power is on. Let's see how this runs. Now this is going to run forward only, but really curious to see how it's going to run. So as you see, it appears to be running perfectly. That's 50% power. That needs to run. This motor has been sitting in the box under the bench for months. It's got a traction tire on it, of course. And that headlight bezel doesn't look too bad at all. And this thing is far from perfect. Like I said, it's just made out of junk. Literally made out of junk. But it's always fun to put something together. And especially when you can take something that's broken, that wasn't usable, and modify it. In this case, I had to add that headlight bezel to repair it, but it works and it doesn't look bad at all, I don't think. Let's get a shot of this so you can see it. So it's far from perfect, but it doesn't look bad, I don't think. And it's a simple repair if you have the parts to do it with, of course. Now, I could have just filed that flush and then just filled the hole with epoxy. It still would have worked. But that bezel gives it a nice finished effect, and it has that yellow lens in it. Like I said, this is off a Canadian Pacific. And it was in the parts box, so I just used it. Anyway, it's a simple repair. Like I said, this is a 490 originally set up for the micro motor. But it was a usable body, so I wanted to go ahead and put a motor in it, and added a tab and slot coupler, and it's up and running. Like I said, it is far from perfect, but it works. And it's a great way to make use of old parts. In this case, I just put that motor together. And I had better shells, but I always try to repair the stuff that's broken, if I can. Now, a good tip, if you have one of these things that is really broken, you can saw the stack off and use it for a lens bezel for a Commodore Vanderbilt. Make some modifications to it, of course. And Gary, over at Trains in the Basement, chops the horns off and modifies them for use on diesels, which I thought was a great idea. Anyway, just wanted to put this thing together. I mean, made entirely out of junk. That's all you can say about it. And I had no idea what I was actually going to do with this 490 shell, especially since that front bezel was broken. It was broken almost in half, cracked, and a big split in it on one side. It was beyond repair. So the only option was to physically cut it off. And so I saw that bezel and lens that I had. So I just cut that off, filed it flush, and cut little slots for the tabs to fit in that this bezel has. And then just put a drop of epoxy on it, pressed it into position, and it's up and running. So I just put this motor in here. Like I said, it's far from perfect, but it is running. Pulling 14 cars with no problem. Single reduction motor, of course. Runs forward only, but it runs. That's the neat thing about it. So another new locomotive made out of junk. I mean, literal junk. %50 power, pulling 14 cars. That's running really well. I mean, it's far from perfect, but it's nice to take a bunch of parts and put them all together and make a running locomotive. So it looks nice, far from perfect, but it's running, and it cost absolutely nothing. Like I said, it is nice to be back working on trains again. So far from perfect, but it's running, and it was free. And I had the fun of putting this together out of parts. So like I said, it's far from perfect, but it's running. And the motor itself is actually in fairly decent shape, covered with rust, of course. But once you get these things cleaned up and get all the gunk and the junk and the dirt and the grime out of them, and in this case, the E-unit was beyond repair. The coil was dead. And I'm not going to start rewinding coil, so it's just easier, in my opinion, to bypass a defective E-unit rather than to tear the entire motor apart and try to repair that E-unit. So anyway, I just want to do a quick follow-up video on making locomotives out of junk parts. Because once you have a supply of parts, you can repair anything. If you have a wheel puller, a way to press the wheels back on, some basic parts, a couple of screwdrivers, you can repair anything you can find on eBay. So total cost to build this was nothing. I mean, it's just made out of parts out of the parts box. The motor was junk, the body was junk, and when you find this stuff broken, you can pick it up really, really cheap. Like I said, this came with something that I bought, no idea why or what. But the reason it was in the parts box, of course, was because that front headlight bezel was broken off. A big split, a big wedge-shaped piece missing out of it. And when you find them like that, there's no way to repair them. There's no practical way. I mean, if you want to use epoxy putty and sit there for a couple hours and shape a new one, yeah, you can. But in this case, it was easier to literally just cut it off with a hacksaw, file it flush, smooth out the plastic, and then mount a bezel on there with a lens in it. So as you can see, that doesn't look bad, considering it's just made out of parts. So I just want to do a quick video on this. It's really simple. It's a lot of fun to do it. It actually only takes a few minutes. Once you have the wheel puller and a wheel press, you can have these motors completely gutted in just a matter of a few minutes. I mean, literally a few minutes. You can have the wheels off in 10 seconds each and split the case, do whatever you want to do. But in this case, I just got it running, and I'll get it cleaned up a bit more. But I just wanted to do a quick video of throwing this thing together and, of course, watching it run. So, like I said, it's far from perfect, but it's running. It's actually running fairly well, considering this is the very first time on the rail. And like I said, it's far from perfect, but it's running. And it's another new locomotive. So I just want to do a quick follow-up video on building locomotives out of parts. Like I said, if you find a locomotive on eBay or anywhere that doesn't run and you can't fix it, or you don't want to put that much work into it, use it for parts. Out of the parts of one motor, you can fix 5 or 6 others. And then once you have a supply of parts, you can fix anything you can find on eBay. Literally anything, regardless of what's wrong with it. Once you have a way to pull the wheels off and press them back on, then it's just a matter of having a replacement part or being able to repair what you have. But it's really straightforward, and in this case, for an old junker, it doesn't look too bad. An old 490, put a little bit of work in this, you can make really nice custom locomotives out of some real trash that you can find on eBay or virtually anywhere. And I look at estate sales and thrift stores and antique stores. The problem with buying any of this stuff in an antique store or a shop is that they are, in 99% of the time, way, way overpriced. You'll see a 490 if somebody wants $60 for it. You know, it's ridiculous. On eBay, you can find these things for $5. And, you know, even if they don't run, that's what I look for, especially when they say that they don't run. It's always fun to have a challenge. And in most cases, I'd say over 99% of the time, anything I buy is running within a matter of minutes. As long as you have the parts to repair one of these motors, it's just literally a matter of a few minutes to get one of these things running. So anyway, I just want to do a follow-up video. Another 490, modified of course, but built completely out of junk parts. It runs, it looks okay, it was fun to do it, and best of all, it cost absolutely nothing. So another running locomotive made out of junk. So I just want to do a quick video on this. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email, BENZTRAINZ@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for watching.